The courtroom was redolent with the scent of aged wood and shattered vows. Sitting at the defendant's stand, I kept my hands neatly folded, watching my wife give an extraordinary performance. If I didn't know the truth, I might have fallen for it myself. Alara delicately dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her shoulders quivering with controlled sobs. She was attired in a modest navy dress, subtle pearl earrings, and sufficient makeup to resemble a woman who had been weeping for days. Each detail was meticulously planned, each gesture rehearsed. "He departed, Your Honor," she managed to utter, her voice faltering at the opportune moments. "Cyprian packed his belongings one night and left through the door. He deserted me. He deserted our children. For 3 months, Your Honor, I have endured silence, endured emptiness." Judge Mercer, a woman in her 60s with iron-gray hair and eyes that had witnessed every conceivable lie, leaned forward slightly. "Mrs. Vance, I recognize this is hard. Please take your time." Alara acknowledged with another wipe of her eyes, expressing gratitude towards the judge. However, she never anticipated him acting in such a way. For 15 years, she had stood by him, presenting him with 2 lovely offspring, but he vanished without trace. Her attorney, Attorney Vane, loomed nearby, much like a vulture over roadkill. His visage was the type to make one scrutinize their wallet after a handshake. "Your Honor," Attorney Vane uttered, his voice oozing rehearsed empathy, "my client has been left in an unbearable circumstance. Mr. Vance deserted his family without prior warning, without offering reasons, and without rendering any financial aid. For 92 days, he has made no effort to connect with his wife or children. He has neglected to pay the mortgage. He has failed to cover the utilities. He has left Mrs. Vance and their 2 children struggling to maintain a home they can no longer afford." Judge Mercer's gaze turned towards me. "Mr. Vance, these accusations are severe, pertaining to spousal matters." "Did you have anything to respond with?" I remained motionless, silent. My face was as empty as a pristine canvas. Alara carried on with her presentation. "I've made countless attempts to reach him, Your Honor, but he blocked my calls. I emailed, he ignored. I even visited his office only to be told that he wasn't receiving visitors." She let a tear trickle down her cheek. I suspect there might be another woman." A ripple of whispers swept through the courtroom. Alara bowed her head, looking forlorn like a bereaved spouse. "He frequently worked late," she murmured. "I should have detected the warning signs, but I had faith in him. I put all my trust in him." Attorney Vane seized the opportunity. "Your Honor, given the unequivocal evidence of desertion, we are asking for full custody of the minor children, exclusive ownership of the marital home, and the highest allowable alimony and child support. Through his actions, it's clear that Vance has no desire to be a husband or a father." Judge Mercer scrutinized me again, her forehead creased. "Mr. Vance, I must ask you once more, do you wish to make any statements on your behalf?" I glanced at my attorney, a taciturn man named Peterson, who had been suggested by a friend specializing in intricate scenarios. He subtly indicated for me to proceed. Standing up carefully, I straightened my tie. When I spoke, my tone was composed and even. "Nearly indifferent, Your Honor, I did not desert my family." Alara's attention shifted sharply, her gaze sharpened. "I was legally obligated to depart." The courtroom fell silent. I rummaged in the folder before me and extracted a solitary sheet of paper. I pushed it towards Peterson, who passed it to the bailiff, who then gave it to Judge Mercer. "Exhibit A," I said. "A temporary restraining order filed by Alara Vance on October 14th of this year, exactly 92 days ago, was what the document represented." Judge Mercer read the document. Her facial expression transformed. Previously professional detachment stiffened into something more frosty. "The restraining order," I explained further, "indicates that if I interact with my spouse in any manner, enter the property, or attempt to financially support the household, which she labels as financial control, I face immediate arrest." I left these words hanging. "I didn't abandon my family, Your Honor. My wife filed a legal document prohibiting me from being within 500 feet of our children. She threatened me with imprisonment if I paid even the electric bill, and now she stands before you claiming I left voluntarily." Judge Mercer lifted her gaze from the document, staring intently at Alara. The sympathy vanished. In its stead was an expression that resembled contempt. "Mrs.," she said, eyes flashing with what seemed like disgust. "Judge Mercer," you said cautiously, "you've issued an ex parte order preventing your spouse from the property, prohibiting contact with our children, and barring him from financial matters, yet here you are filing a suit for abandonment." Alara's complexion paled. Her gaze shifted to Attorney Vane, who seemed surprisingly engaged with his notes. "Your Honor," she faltered, "the conditions were distinct then. I was afraid, he was volatile, I felt threatened." "The order mentions fear of imminent danger," you clarified. However, there is no police report, no recorded incident, no corroborating witnesses. It was a preventive measure, Alara explained hastily. I didn't believe he would truly leave. I anticipated he would challenge it, I thought. She trailed off, comprehending she had just admitted the truth. She believed I would contest the order promptly, to appeal and plead to seem unstable before a judge. She anticipated me to give her the materials to portray me as the instigator. However, I didn't retaliate. Instead, for 92 days, I resided in a hotel room. I went to work, dined alone, neither called nor texted her, nor drove by our house. I adhered meticulously to the restraining order, and each day I recorded. Judge Mercer put down the document and folded her hands. "Mr. Vance," she said, "I'm concerned about what's unfolding here. It seems your wife fabricated a crisis to evict you from the home and now aims to profit from that eviction." "That's not accurate," Alara disputed. "He had the option to challenge the order, strive for custody of our children, but he chose not to." I smirked, a smile devoid of warmth. "In fact," I replied, "I decided to wait." Alara was taken aback. "You mean you understand that my wife isn't proficient in deciphering legal documents?" If she had been present, she might not have overlooked something significant concerning our home. I delved into my file and retrieved another paperwork. This one had aged, its edges slightly yellow. "Our dwelling," I clarified, "has belonged to my family for 4 generations. My great-grandfather constructed it in 1922. Upon his passing, he placed it into a trust named the Vance Heritage Trust." Peterson passed the document to the court officer. "This is a replica of the original deed and trust papers," I stated, requesting the court's attention. "I wish to draw your attention to Clause 14B, which I have marked for convenience." Judge Mercer accepted the paperwork and started reading. As she did so, I observed Alara's expression. She was yet to comprehend. She failed to perceive the closing noose. Clause 14B, I stated, is a conditional habitation clause. It specifies that the property remains under the management of the primary beneficiary, which is me, only as long as that beneficiary maintains uninterrupted residency. If an individual vacates a property for over 90 days, whether willingly or not, the ownership instantly transfers to the Vance Heritage Conservancy, an organization designed to maintain the historical authenticity of the estate. As I pondered this information, I realized that my wife's restraining order filed 92 days ago meant our house was no longer in either of our names as of 48 hours prior. Alara looked shocked. "That can't be. That can't possibly be true." I clarified that it indeed was possible and had already occurred. The transition occurred upon my prolonged absence. The house now belongs to the Conservancy. Lawyer Vane then interjected, his tone sharp. "Your Honor, this is preposterous." The defendant cannot evade responsibility due to an ambiguous term hidden within antiquated documents. I countered by stating that she had signed a prenuptial agreement prior to our marriage, which outlined the trust structure and all pertinent conditions. This was advised by separate legal counsel. He was fully aware of her consent. Producing another document, I declared that I have a copy of this agreement with her signature and the signature of her attorney at the time. Alara stood up sharply, causing her chair to screech against the floor. "This is manipulation. He orchestrated this," she accused. "Did you arrange for me to file that restraining order?" I questioned. "Mrs. Vance, you submitted that order to have me removed from the house to make way for someone else." The courtroom fell into silence. "I have no idea what you're implying," Alara responded, her voice lacking conviction. I reached into my folder one final time. "In court, Your Honor, I present photographs taken over the last 8 weeks by a licensed private investigator. These images depict Kaylin Brooks accessing the property at all times, using a key to enter, managing household chores such as taking out trash and mowing the lawn, and even carrying groceries. The house in question, I indicate, is where my children attend school, and this photograph shows him walking them there. In the final picture, Kaylin Brooks is seen bidding farewell to my wife at the front door, causing Alara's complexion to pale significantly. Furthermore, Your Honor, I wish to clarify that my wife did not file a restraining order out of fear for her safety, but rather as a means to move her boyfriend into our shared family home. She believed that by ousting me and awaiting the divorce, she would gain ownership of the property. Unfortunately, she failed to comprehend that her actions would instead set off a chain reaction, leading to both parties potentially losing the property. Judge Mercer gazed at Alara with an icy scorn. "Mrs. Vance, is what I'm about to ask true? Did you let another man reside in the marital home despite your own restraining order preventing your husband from being there?" Alara hesitated, opening and closing her mouth. It's intricate, Your Honor. Kaylin is a friend. He was helping with the kids while Cyprian was away." A friend who goodbye kisses you at the front door? Judge Mercer inquired dryly. Alara remained speechless. I adjusted my tie. Your Honor, there's one more document I need to present. I passed the final paper to Peterson, who gave it to the judge. This is a formal eviction notice from the Vance Heritage Conservancy. Effective immediately, Alara Vance and Kaylin Brooks are deemed unauthorized residents of Conservancy property. You can't do this, Alara murmured weakly. Indeed, I can provide an extra detail. As the chair of the Conservancy's Board of Directors, a role I've held for 7 years, I should note that the position was initially outlined in my great-grandfather's original charter and passed down through our family. Judge Mercer chuckled skeptically. Allow me to clarify, she said. Mrs. Vance sought a restraining order to expel her husband from their ancestral home, then moved her boyfriend in. She subsequently sued her husband for abandonment, hoping to claim the house in the divorce. However, due to a stipulation in the family trust, her actions resulted in the forfeiture of the property. Now her husband, in his capacity as chairman of the organization that now possesses the home, is ordering her eviction. Yes, that's accurate, Your Honor, I confirmed. Judge Mercer sighed and shook her head. Over the course of my 23 years on this bench, I have rarely encountered such a complex situation. Alara was visibly shaken, her composure faltering. This can't be true. She looked at me with desperation. What about the children? Where will we go? I turned to face her squarely for the first time since the hearing commenced. That question no longer concerns me, Alara, as you ensured when you filed that restraining order. I won't let this happen, she retorted. I'll appeal. You have the right to try, I replied calmly. But be aware that the Conservancy has initiated a separate civil action against you and Mr. Brooks for unauthorized property occupation. We are demanding back rent at commercial rates, $15,000 monthly for the last 3 months, totaling $45,000 along with legal fees. The color drained from Alara's face instantly. Additionally, you are named as a co-defendant in a complaint alleging a false restraining order filing. Perjury is a grave offense, Mrs. Vance, as it involves falsifying statements submitted to the court. Attorney Vane was already gathering his belongings. In the courtroom, I observed he didn't address his client. Judge Mercer rapped her gavel. Considering today's evidence, I am rejecting the petitioner's plea for alimony and sole ownership of the property. The asset in question is no longer a shared property and thus falls beyond this court's purview. Custody matters will be tackled in a subsequent hearing. Court adjourned. She stood, vanished through the door behind the bench. I collected my papers deliberately, meticulously. Afterwards, the courtroom emptied, leaving Alara rooted at her desk, gazing vacantly at nothing. Her lawyer had departed. Her well-laid plan crumbled beneath her. I passed her en route to the exit. Pausing, I said, "Funny, isn't it, Alara? If you had simply filed for divorce like an ordinary person, you would have received a fair settlement. You could have preserved your dignity. You might have chosen to remain in the house until we reached an agreement, but instead you devised a plan to undermine me for personal gain." I leaned in and whispered, "But you had to be cunning, scheming, seeking my downfall." Straightening up, I declared, "Now you possess nothing." Exiting the courtroom, I walked into the sunlight-bathed hallway where Peterson followed. He murmured, "That was precise." "Silence," I responded, "is often perceived as weakness. People rarely consider that one might be moving forward rather than retreating. The 90-day clause, Peterson reminded me, was something my grandfather had informed me about at 18. "Cyprian," he said, "there will come a day when someone attempts to seize what's ours. When that day comes, remember that patience is a weapon." I pressed the elevator button and waited. On any given day, Alara could have submitted the restraining order. She chose October 14th. My reaction, though not influenced by her timing, was within my control. Upon receiving that document, I immediately understood the countdown that had begun. I suspected the boyfriend, and the restraining order confirmed it. If she truly feared me, a divorce would have been more appropriate. Instead, she opted for a specific restriction on my access to the property, which implied self-interest or a third party's interest in the house. The elevator doors slid open. "What happens next?" Peterson inquired. "For the next 24 hours, she needs to gather her belongings and vacate. After that, she'll be considered a trespasser. Kaylin as well. They can challenge the eviction, but my great-grandfather's trust documents are unassailable. He was meticulous in his planning. As for the children, they are the only aspect I regret about this situation." My finger hovered over the button to reach the ground floor. They weren't the ones who picked their mother. They didn't request to be pieces in her game. I pressed the button, indicating I had filed for custody. The evidence of her affair coupled with the fraudulent protective order should serve as leverage. I'll ensure a secure environment for them, even if it means constructing it from the ground up. Peterson warned me that she would challenge me on custody matters. He mentioned she might accuse me of orchestrating everything and manipulating her. Let her claim whatever she pleases, I responded. The facts remain the facts. She filed a protective order based on false accusations, moved her lover into my home, and lied under oath to the judge. Each choice was hers. As the elevator descended, I stepped out onto the ground floor. True vengeance, I said, doesn't require doing anything wrong. It lies in waiting for the other person to bring about their own downfall. I left the lobby and ventured into the cold January air. In that courthouse, likely still standing at a table, Elira was probably pondering how her carefully crafted plan disintegrated in her hands. My thoughts drifted back to our first encounter 20 years ago. She was breathtaking then, radiant, overflowing with prospects and opportunities. I recalled the day we exchanged vows, nestled within the garden of my grandfather's house, my great-grandfather's house. She wore white and professed her love for me. I remembered our first child's birth, her tender embrace as she cried tears of joy, and I reminisced about the day I stumbled upon laughter emanating from upstairs, a male laugh, echoing from our bedroom. On that day, I chose not to confront or argue, instead walking away to my lawyer's office without a word. That was 6 months before she filed for a restraining order. For 6 months, she observed, documented, and prepared, believing the restraining order was her strategy. She thought she held the reins, unaware I had been anticipating her actions. My phone vibrated, a message from Peterson. She's still in court. Security asked her to depart twice, but she claimed her lawyer would return. I typed a response, "He won't be back." Tucking my phone away, I called a taxi. "Destination?" the driver queried. I provided the downtown real estate office address. An appointment to inspect a fresh apartment awaited, one that would be mine. As the taxi moved from the curb, I cast one final glance at the courthouse. Elira yearned for the house, craved the wealth, sought to expunge me from my existence and substitute someone else, yet she overlooked the fundamental rule of any game. Understand your adversary. She believed she understood me. Initially deemed passive, predictable, and manipulable, it was proven incorrect when a turn in the taxi obscured the courthouse from sight, followed by the granting of full custody of both children 2 weeks later. The judge pointed out Elira's documented history of deceit and tendency to exploit children as bargaining chips. Supervised visitation rights were granted, but Elira has yet to avail them. Kalen vanished soon after eviction, suggesting his affinity for Elira was contingent on her control over a $5 million estate. With the loss of the house and lifestyle, he moved on elsewhere. Eventually, Elira secured an apartment in a less desirable area of town. She's now employed, something she hadn't done since before our marriage. Occasionally, she still sends letters filled with threats and appeals, which I disregard, forwarding them to Peterson instead. The house remains vacant these days. The Conservancy is transforming it into a historical museum, as originally planned. The tour begins next month. A plaque by the front door bears my great-grandfather's name. At times, I pass by, noticing fresh paint on the shutters, new landscaping, and tourists snapping photos in the garden. It no longer feels like a loss, but rather a sense of justice. My children are adapting. They occasionally ask about their mother, to which I truthfully explain that adults can sometimes make mistakes with unintended consequences. I assure them that my love for them remains constant. In the stillness of night when they sleep soundly in their beds, I sit in my study, pondering over everything that transpired. I reflect on patience, strategy, and the distinction between a reaction and a response. Elira aimed to annihilate me, seeking to strip me bare. Instead, she destroyed herself. Each move she made, every plan she concocted, every falsehood she spoke, they all guided her to precisely the place I desired, and the remarkable aspect is that I didn't have to exert any effort. She accomplished it all on her own. The genuine essence of revenge lies in this. You don't need to transform into a malefactor to outwit one, you merely have to wait patiently for them to unveil their true nature, and then the truth will handle the rest.